Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful story from the Bible about a king's costly choice. We'll be looking at this through the lens of Reformed theology, which really zeroes in on God's absolute sovereignty in, well, everything. The story asks a question that I think we all face. What do you do when the right path looks like it's going to cost you something you just can't bear to lose? And this single promise? This is the absolute heart of our story. It's a direct quote from God's messenger to a king who is staring down a massive financial loss. And look, this isn't just some nice, comforting phrase. It's a promise that's designed to completely flip the script on our ideas about value and trust. I mean, we've all been there, right? You're at a crossroads, and one path is clearly the right one, but man, it comes with a serious personal cost. Maybe it's money, a relationship, or a huge opportunity. That exact tension is what we're going to unpack today. So, our story centers on King Amaziah of Judah, and you can find it in 2 Chronicles chapter 25. He found himself smack in the middle of this exact kind of costly dilemma, and the choice he makes offers a profound lesson on faith, obedience, and God's provision. The Bible sets the scene with this really crucial detail. It says Amaziah started his reign with good intentions, wanting to follow God. But, and this is the key, he did it not wholeheartedly. This partial commitment, this holding back just a little, created the absolute perfect conditions for a major test of his faith. So picture this. Amaziah is gearing up for a major battle. He gathers his own pretty impressive army of 300,000 men from Judah. But in his mind, that just wasn't enough. He felt like he needed more strength, more security, so he looked for outside help to basically guarantee the win. And that help came with a very steep price tag. He hired 100,000 elite soldiers from the kingdom of Israel for 100 talents of silver. Now, to put that in perspective, this wasn't just some small expense. We're talking about a fortune, a massive investment to make sure his military campaign would be a success. But just as all his plans were set, just as the money was spent, Amaziah gets a divine message. A message that was about to challenge his entire strategy and his priorities. So a prophet, who the Bible calls a man of God, comes and confronts the king, and the command from God is direct, it's non-negotiable. Send the hired army home. And why? Because God was not with them. Relying on their strength meant he was relying on the wrong thing entirely. The warning is laid out in 4 crystal clear steps. First, don't ally with Israel. Second, God isn't with them. Third, if you ignore this, God himself will make sure you are defeated. And finally, and this really gets to the heart of divine sovereignty, God alone holds the power to give victory or to bring ruin. He isn't just a factor in the outcome, he is the factor. So what's Amaziah's first response to this divine command? Is it about military strategy? Is it about theology? Nope. It's about the money. But what about the 100 talents? He's totally focused on the investment he's already made. He's caught in that classic sunk cost fallacy, where the fear of losing what you've already spent just clouds all your judgment. And this moment of hesitation, this very human concern about his financial loss, leads us to the prophet's incredible response, which is really the heart of this entire lesson. The choice just couldn't be clearer. On one side, you have Amaziah's fear, the tangible, calculated loss of a fortune in silver. On the other side, you have God's promise, the unseen, limitless provision of a God who owns everything. So, was he going to trust in what he could see and count, or in the infinite resources of the God he claimed to serve? And in what has to be a defining moment of faith, Amaziah made his choice. He let go of his investment. He chose obedience over his bank account, and he sent the mercenaries home, placing his trust entirely in God for the upcoming battle. So what can we take away from King Amaziah's story? The source material we're looking at really distills it into 2 crucial lessons that are just as relevant for us today as they were back then. So, the first lesson is that true obedience to God can sometimes feel really, really costly. It often requires us to walk away from things we've poured our time, our money, or our emotions into. It might be a relationship, a career path, or a plan we were absolutely counting on. Applying this means we have to actively choose not to let the fear of loss call the shots. It's about trusting that God's perspective is way bigger than ours, that he sees the whole picture, And it's about believing that anything we give up for him is never truly lost. It's really just an investment in a different kind of economy. And that brings us to the second incredibly hope-filled lesson, which flows right from God's promise to the king. His ability to provide is not limited by our resources, our plans, or our financial calculations. This promise of much more isn't always about getting the money back. It's about receiving what we truly need, often in ways we could never predict. This encourages a pretty radical kind of faith. It's about acting in obedience even when it feels super risky, believing that God's blessings aren't confined by our limitations. It's about being willing to say yes to him even when our spreadsheets and bank statements are all screaming no. So this brings us to the final takeaway, which you can really sum up in a simple but profound spiritual equation. Our trust in God's provision must become greater than our fear of loss. If you remember just one thing from this explainer, let it be this. The entire story boils down to this powerful, two-part truth. When we choose to obey, God shows himself faithful every single time and provides more than we could have ever held on to ourselves. So, as we close, the story turns the question back to us. Let's really think about this. Where in our own lives is the fear of losing something, money, status, comfort, control, holding us back from obeying God? What are we clinging to so tightly? And what much more might he have for us if we just dare to let go and trust him instead?